I do have maybe a little curveball question. Is there anything when you got into the committees that you were surprised by? Anything you said, whoa, I did not expect this?
I think to do these things right, any changes, there's a lot of complexity and a lot of different things that need to be considered.
Yeah.
And it's really valuable to bring in new perspectives, but then also to have folks involved who know the history and know if you decide this, it's going to create this impact over here.
Yeah.
And at the committee level, that's really where those things get discussed, and you can pull in others for input. You can go through an educational process because, you know, the world is always changing, Maine's changing, New Gloucester's changing.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to do that really carefully, and the more that we work together on these things, and even if at the beginning you might have really different perspectives, the more you talk about it, the more you collaborate, then the better the result in the end will be.
Mm-hmm.
So the extent to which there's nuance and complications to any given issue, the issue could be as small as a stop sign.
Right. Yeah.
Which, you know, you would think is really straightforward, like, yeah, let's put a stop sign, but really there's other considerations, you know, there's other places that might need a stop sign, and so really patiently working through all that and being really open and receptive and kind of desiring as much input is really essential.
Yeah. Oh, good.
What about you? What have you found surprising? I'm sure quite a bit. You guys have tackled a lot of tricky things this year on the select board.
Yeah, no, it truly is a year learning curve to really understand it. I think there was two things that stuck out to me that were huge surprises. One was the answer to the question of why things take so long to change. And you're right, that complexity sort of forces you to realize a decision isn't just a simple decision. You have to take in so many factors. So sometimes it takes a couple meetings to get to the right answer. I think one of the things that when I came in initially, I assumed that all 5 board members would be chatting with each other, coordinating, planning so that we could do better in terms of our group work, sort of a group think idea. And I quickly learned that when you have 2 or more members gathered together, it's technically a public meeting, and that has to be notified to the public within at least 10 days or more, and it has to be publicized. And so we actually can't coordinate or talk outside of our regular meetings because those need to be made public for our citizens and for our residents. Mm-hmm. So I sort of went in thinking we were going to grow together as a group, and really the growth happens in the meeting, which is a very public setting. And I guess that was a surprise to me that I didn't expect. So really what I learned over this last year is how do you work with people, not just behind the scenes, but in front of folks, and how can you truly model that and be an example for that? And I hope I've done well with that, but I think what you said as well is a reality, even in committees. How do you work with a group that's really on display and bring an issue and change forward? So I guess it was just something I hadn't expected, and then walked in and said, wow, okay, this is nuanced, this is different, this isn't what I'm used to. So those are probably the 2 biggest surprises that I've had thus far.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the past couple years, both through my committee work and from attending a bunch of select board meetings, either remotely or in person, I've got to learn a lot about how it works. Mm-hmm. From your perspective, are there things that could work better? Do you think the select board is focusing on the right things? Mm-hmm. Is there a way for governance in New Gloucester to be more effective?
There probably are a couple places that would require a much longer conversation than we could ever have, but I think one of the first places is sort of inefficiency. Is how do we truly take care of the business at hand while also planning out 2 or 3 years with the decisions that we make. I think very often we get into kind of a routine process. We have this thing before us, we sign off on it, we move on to the next. And we're not really trajectory thinking 3 years out. And I think if we got better at being efficient with our meetings, we could take opportunities to really think, okay, what's coming down the pike? How do we move something 3 years out? And it's just hard because there's always a lot that comes to the plate of the board. So I think that's one area that we could definitely improve. And I think the other area, which again is going to need a bevy of conversations, is our budget process. I think there's a traditional piece to that, and I think there was wanting to have lots of eyes on lots of pieces, but I still think that sometimes it has some clunkiness and can be smoothed out. whether that's through CIP being slightly shifted where the budget process in and of itself could be more collaborative. I think we have so many meetings on our budget, and I think there's a more efficient way to look at our budget and really see it as a way to have a vision for New Gloucester. And that's how we should be viewing it, right? With ideas and thoughts and a plan in mind. So to me, I think those are some of the places that we absolutely can move some things forward. As you've been in committees, have you seen some other spaces and places where you can see New Gloucester sort of in the future? I mean, what do you see as sort of a vision for this town?
Yeah, so similar things that you just mentioned. I think the select board should be looking a little farther into the future and focusing on higher level things like really implementing the comprehensive plan. Mm-hmm. To do that right, it's going to take a lot of focused effort, and a lot of effort went into developing that. It had a ton of input from across the town and from outside experts as well. I think we're all interested in carefully managing New Gloucester so that it doesn't turn into a boom town. But some growth and change is inevitable and is a good thing.
Absolutely.
So I think something that's going to help that happen and help the select board have time to focus on those kinds of things is if there's more delegation to our awesome town staff. Mm-hmm. I've been super impressed by everyone on staff, and I think that they could be empowered to do more and decide more, and maybe not all of the things that have to go through select board have to go through. Maybe more of it can be managed with our capable team. Yeah. Similarly, we have a lot of volunteers on committees, mm-hmm. and there's been an increased interest in volunteering for committees. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be great if the select board also empowered committees to do more. They want to. Yep. Or many of them do want to, and yes, they should work on the things the select board asked them to work on, but also if there are things that are of interest to them or that they're hearing from residents that they should work on, I think they should do that and bring recommendations to the select board, even those that the select board maybe hasn't specifically asked for. Yeah. So really we have a lot of resources in town. Let's use them. Yep. And we can still carefully manage things and make sure everything is following the right process. But why not distribute some of the workload so that we get even better results and more of a long-term rather than reactive system of governance here?
Absolutely, yeah.